Yeah, it really depends. I mean, as to how much time you spend worrying about the opposition, I think it depends upon your own team and the competition you're in. Certainly, obviously in a professional environment, yeah, like I do devote quite a bit of time towards that, and we need to sort of steer that. When it's not a professional environment, I would suggest you probably spend more time on yourself and making sure you own your strengths.
G'day, Rod. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. Thanks, Kieran. Yourself?
Yeah, going really well, thanks. So, how's the year going so far? And what have you been up to recently since post-Super Rugby season?
Well, certainly post-Super Rugby season, things move pretty quickly at the Brums. So we've got, with national programs kicking off, you got players sort of going off in different directions, as well as staff who are involved in those sort of national programs. So for myself, that was with Australia A. So with Australia A, we went over to Tonga and played them in a one-off game. So that sort of took my focus initially, and then sort of since then, been a little bit of family time. So we certainly don't sort of rush into reviews. So we've got to let sort of the dust settle and collect our thoughts. But so basically since then, I've been family time in my review process.
It's awesome. It's always interesting to see, life after Super Rugby because it is so small, and even the preseason is so small. So you still got plenty of work to do, and then you have the international season. Then you still got to get players through that, and then through club rugby, or certain players go overseas, like we've seen Noah and Billy go overseas to play. So it's always interesting to know what coaches get up to post Super Rugby.
That's right. You got so many moving parts there, haven't you? Like you got some players who go to NPC. Some, as you mentioned, on World Cup Jokers. You got some guys going into John O'Dent. So there's a whole range of sort of moving parts there that you sort of try and keep a handle on, just to make sure that when you do come together again, you sort of know where people are at.
How was the Australia A? Because some of the talent in that team should be in the Wallaby squad right now, and you might even be picking quite a few of them for your World Cup squad coming up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, I've been fortunate to go on a few trips now with Aussie A, and it's sort of been different makeup of the groups each time. And but it's it was an absolute treat to work with the guys. It was, it's always tough. Like that particular one, we just had one game, so it's 2 training sessions. There's no combination. A lot of the combinations hadn't played together before, so that was a big challenge. And then in the actual game itself, the first half we played into quite a stiff breeze, which didn't help things. And then you can sort of see, the second half when, sort of collected our thoughts and gathered where we were and had the wind to help us out. We've managed to sort of swing momentum. It's just a shame we couldn't finish it off. But no, it's always a pleasure to work with different players, and particularly at that level where they're just so professional. And like, for example, Bernard Foley I hadn't worked with before. He was a terrific person, terrific leader. In terms of connection to the group, was fantastic, and obviously what he adds on field is great too. So the quality of that group was outstanding. So hopefully, no doubt, we'll see some of those pop up in World Cup.
I just hope they continue the Australia A side, because it's just so good for these players to get experience and continue to play at a high level. And then if injuries happen, which we have seen last year with the Wallabies and many years before that as well, that players need to be ready. And are they ready enough just playing club rugby, or do they need to continue to play at a high level so they can just walk straight into the Wallaby setup and be ready to go to play any international team?
No, you're spot on. And like the other thing to add in there too is that when that Aussie A will try and follow as much as we can the Wallaby template, so the Wallaby language and style of play. So that way they're not only physically where they need to be, they're actually walking into a program that they're feeling comfortable with, and they're comfortable with the terminology and what they're trying to achieve. So I think it's a no-brainer. I think it's a real win for Rugby Australia if they do have that program going.
100%. No one joked about it training to Bernard to say, "Hey, hurry up and kick the ball." Was there any jokes like that, or?
No, I didn't go there. Certainly the first time I met him, I wasn't going to go there, so no.
No, it still hurts. I think every Australian today, it sucks. So that was, it still cuts you deep.
Yeah, no, that's right. It's you see interesting things on a rugby field at times, and that was sort of up there.
Yeah, 100%. So growing up as a young lad, what sports did you play, and do you still play any sports today?
Yeah, like growing up, tried to play everything really. It was sort of based on what my mates were doing, what school provided. But yeah, it was swimming, it was track and field, soccer, cricket, and then so the last one I really got into was rugby. That's sort of how I get all my friendship groups were through sport, and that's where I felt confident. So so I loved sort of having a crack at everything, and now I'd love to still play them all, but my body's falling apart. So I'm at the stage now where I'm taking up riding. I've joined that sort of mammal brigade of middle-aged men in lycra, and I try and get out there and get my heart rate up on a bike. But yeah, unfortunately, change of direction doesn't suit my hips or knees anymore.
Fair enough. It's fair enough to, hop on the saddle and just ease those joints a bit, but you do get aches and pains from other areas, but it's a good way to stay fit and healthy.
No, that's right. Yeah, no, I do like to get the heart rate up, so I do love to get out on the bike ride.
What about golf? Because I know there's a lot of Brumbies boys who love playing golf. Have you ever sort of dabbled into that?
Yeah, mate, I love it. Actually, I'd play every day if I could. It's just work unfortunately gets in the way of that, but that is quite a golfing culture there at the Brums with the players, and I know I'd like to join them if I could, but unfortunately time sort of gets in the way, but I love it.
That's awesome. Yep, definitely with golf, it's not like a thing you can just smash out in an hour unless you go do some practice or something, but if you want to play 9-18s, it's going to take some time depending how good you are.
No, that's right. Yeah, it does. It's a good way to spend a day. Yeah.
So when did you decide you wanted to become a rugby coach? Was this always an area of interest for you?
It's something that I'm a teacher by trade, so I've always been from sort of in uni. I've started coaching and coached obviously kids and school aged in a variety of sports for many years, and it was probably post playing days where and I was working as a director of sport at an independent school, and those sort of jobs they take over your life a little bit, and I was pretty much living at school, and I went to a PD thing, and I can't remember who the bloke was or what he spoke about, but one thing resonated with me, and he said, listen, in terms of your own well-being, you need to have something that you do or enjoy away from work. That'll give you perspective, and it'll give you something to have to leave work to do, and it really did resonate with me, because I thought, this work thing's taken over my life. I don't have time for anything. So I thought when I did finish playing, I was as a sort of assistant coach capacity as well. So I thought, I actually really like to coach adults again. Obviously coach kids every day at school, but to actually coach adults, it's a different environment. So I thought, that's probably something I'll give a go and have a look at. And so I went back to my club that I played with in Brisbane at Sunnybank, and position was open. They sort of welcomed me in, and I guess with my teaching background, I felt pretty comfortable in that zone, but just really enjoyed just that atmosphere of being part of a team again. That's I always loved team sport and being part of that team culture. And when your body lets you down, you get too old, you can't play it anymore. It's another avenue to get in there and still enjoy that. And I'm a very competitive person, so to be part of that sort of competitive environment again, it's quite exhilarating.
If you can't play, you coach. That's it. I like to say. That's really interesting, because Laurie Fisher is a teacher by trade as well, and then became a coach. So I guess it's a great pathway to go through, as if you aren't sort of knowing what you want to do, maybe become a teacher and then see if you can then become a coach, or just something along those lines. But if you're able to teach something, then you should be able to coach a sport that you really enjoy. Yeah,
there's certainly a lot of good practices you learn from teaching, and you tend to find those really good teachers will transfer really well into coaching.
But I do like what you said of having something outside of the workplace for you to enjoy and forget about it, because you can just get caught up too much of what you're doing, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just you need a mental break. Like all the best athletes out there find something else to do. With the Brumbies boys, a lot of them like to go play golf. That's something different to what they're doing. Or they're doing some study or they're doing something out there just to forget that they're a professional athlete and, focusing too much. Whereas if you focus too much, you're probably not focusing on the things you should focus on, and you get down this rabbit hole and it just goes on forever. But if you find that area to, an outlet, then you can really recover and then go to work and really enjoy it, but then also know how to switch off the brain, which is the hard part.
Well, that's it. Yeah, you just get perspective, don't you? Like, I know at work, I was getting worried about things that, really when you step back and look at it, it's so irrelevant and really doesn't mean anything. So it's, good to have that outlet.
So would you say family and cycling are your outlet from coaching?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, at the moment, that's definitely it. Yep.
Awesome. Would you ever, challenge Dan McKellar to a bike race or something like that if you, was up for it?
Oh, mate, I'd love to. He'll probably try and trip me up, Dan, like competitive bike. No, I'm not sure Dan really rides a bike, but he's there's a lot of blokes out there who looking for ways to keep ticking their body over. So
he does look quite powerful, so I think the short sprint.
Oh, mate, he's a sprinter. He'd be a sprinter for sure. Yeah, that's it.
That's awesome. So it's been some time now since the Super Rugby season is finished. What were the positives to come out of the season for you?
In terms of positives, I guess the first thing you look at the Brumbies when we started off this year, a bit of change going on. So, we've had sort of successful year previous, and then we've lost, a head coach to start with, as well as other staff members. We've also lost, 4 Wallabies, with your Scott Seo, your Simone, Tom Banks, Flower Fainga. So for a lot of moving parts there, for a lot of key, parts or ingredients in our success have left. To then actually continue on that sort of same trajectory was always going to be a challenge. So in reflection, that's probably one thing that sort of stands out is that, we're actually maintained, a decent level there. Understanding, we still walked away from that semi-final, sort of, disappointed that we, weren't able to get into that GF, but in saying that, we actually managed to replace those people quite well, which was good from a rugby perspective. But really sort of delve into my area in terms of attack. I was quite pleased in terms of the fact that we were able to score so many tries. So we were second in the competition, which reflected well on on a lot of parts of the program there, which was outstanding. And another sort of part that I was pleased with was in terms of when we got into the A zone, we were able to complete quite well. So we're sort of third in terms of converting once we were in that A zone within the competition. So there's sort of 2 key stats which read into a lot of success for teams. If you're scoring tries and you're successful when you get in the A zone, you're obviously going to put yourself in a good position to win games. So, so that was good. And then probably something outside of my area really, which is, I guess I'm part of it, but it's around that discipline. We were, gave away a few penalties than anyone else in the comp, which was, from a team perspective, is outstanding. And that's something that Steve, was really driving from the outset.
I think it's really awesome to see, the system that the Brumbies have, and that's what they're renowned for is, who's next up. And once you come through the system, you're going to be, reaching your full potential, and you're going to be showing that out in the field. And it's really cool to see that. And then, the next play come through, they're ready to go. So I think that's just a really good reflection of the Brumbies system that they've had in there for quite a while is, they'll find the talent, develop it, and then when it's ready to go, it's ready to go. And, you're making really good Super Rugby players, but you're also potentially making Wallabies players, which we've been seeing over the last, however long the Brumbies have been in there. But this last sort of 5-6 years, you've been seeing the Brumbies really dominate the Wallaby squad as well.
Yeah, that's right. It's it really is a positive sign of the program when you got guys who are pushing through to that next level, isn't it?
100%. So for next year in the Super Rugby, what are some areas you're looking to improve upon?
In terms of improvement, from a general consistency, I would like to see, there's a couple of games where we really let ourselves down throughout the season. And so as a result of that, we finished, we could have finished top 2, but we probably dropped a couple of games we should have picked up. So it's that level of consistency and making sure that whatever combination of play we have out there, we're meeting our standards. Certainly early on in the season, first half, we were winning those big moments and we were quite consistent. We weren't playing perfect rugby, but there was some good consistency there. Probably the back end, we probably let a couple of games go that we shouldn't have, and sort of tying in with that consistency would be around starting. We really did let ourselves down that sort of first 10, 15 minutes of games this year. Tended to find that opposition teams were, sort of winning and gaining a little bit of momentum early against us. And at times you'd probably think if you're in the crowd, we were doing it for the crowd, just to keep them entertained. But I tell you, we won't. If we could put the foot down and finish it and seal it for half time, then we'd do that. So that was sort of that was disappointing. In another aspect we'd be looking to build on would be our unstructured game. And it's something that I think we have made really good gains over the last few years in terms of a kick return and turnover attack. But it's you certainly want to be making sure that you're a genuine try source is through your unstructured game. And when you look at the better teams in the competition over recent years, they're the teams who are scoring a lot of counter attack tries, who are really dangerous because they have a skill set and an understanding of how to play that game when it gets a little bit chaotic. And obviously, with the Brumbies, always well known as a set piece team, and that's something that works well with us. But the reality is when you come up against a team, and sometimes it may not be working for you, that set piece, whether that be our deficiencies or opposition who are defending it very well, we need to have another string to go to. So certainly, pleased we've made some improvements in the unstructured game, but I do believe we've still got more to make.
Yeah, 100%. And if you have that extra string to your bow, then it just makes you more of a challenging team to play against. And I feel like that's why the Crusaders have been so good for so long, is they have really good set piece, and then they have players like Richie and like a Will Jordan out there who can just score from anywhere, and they got the fastest wingers that you've ever seen out there and just can do anything and everything, and their skills are so crisp. So if you can add that to your game and not give the opposition a breather, then you're really going to dominate games and potentially win more games as well.
Oh, I totally agree. They're just like Crusaders, just don't let you take a breath in D. It doesn't matter what aspect of the game, where you are on the field. If you give them a sniff, they've got that ability to take it. So, and that's it. Like you Richie Wong is that classic example for me of just that player who can sniff out an opportunity anywhere. It doesn't matter if it's a set piece. It doesn't matter if it's he scored a set piece beautiful off a scrum, just sniffing out a short little blind side to seal a game against South Africans the other day. But equally in a D zone, he might be sort of spotting up and seeing the defence is tracking back, and he'll just take it with ball in hand. So, yeah, incredible skills.
Yeah, I was really impressed with the boys in that semi-final. That was a great way to really give it to the Chiefs, and it went right down to the wire. It just sucked we didn't capitalise on a few opportunities in the A zone, but at least they really stepped up and gave it a roll in a semi-final. And that's what you want. If you get beaten on the day by the better team, I'll take that any day of the week. But the boys really did step up to the New Zealand teams, and we did feel like they could have offered a bit more and potentially got to that grand final and really shown what they got, but just wasn't to be. But it was really good to see the boys step up and really give it to the Chiefs.
Yeah, well, that's right. The Chiefs had to play well to beat us, and that's right. And so we are proud of the effort. Although disappointed we couldn't get there, we haven't walked away thinking that the Chiefs have got away with it. They actually had to earn that win. So yeah, good on them.
And then the Crusaders come out of nowhere and win that. You're just like, bloody hell.
they time it so well, don't they? They get their game clicking perfectly at the right time of the year.
Yeah, 100%. So it sounds like you haven't done the review for this year for the Brumbies, but when you do have an end of season review, how do you make the most of that review and keep it constructive without blaming and pointing the finger at other departments and coaches?
I've never seen any evidence. Certainly, the Brumbies have a blaming culture. Everyone basically starts by looking at their own backyard. So certainly, from an attack perspective, I'll sort of drill down into that, and I'll see where it is that we've been successful, where we need to improve. So delve into a whole lot of different areas. Obviously, that we have information that is fed into us from our analysts, so they'll give us all the statistical data to sort of back that up. But I certainly, in myself, I'd like to start with my coaching eye. So what I'm seeing, and then see if that's backed up with the data. So certainly, as I said before at the start, it's important, I believe, that you don't rush into that review. I think you need to let things settle and really take your time in understanding what it is you're looking at. So obviously start my own backyard and make sure I'm really clear on where it is that I feel we need to improve there. And then obviously it's important, though, that you don't just stick to your own backyard. If we're all going to be learning and growing, like I want people asking me, good questions around, how exactly we're going to improve a particular area, or highlighting that they believe that there might be an area of attack that we could, just to make sure that we're looking at it from a whole lot of different perspectives. Certainly, when you have an input from a forwards coach, they can sometimes get a different perspective to how you might be seeing it, which is really important. So you're just throwing those ideas around as a group, is important. Having players who are also putting forward their ideas. So at the end of the day, when you do actually complete your review, you want to feel like everyone has had their opportunity to put forward their thoughts. If you finished your review process and you're trying to action any of those findings, and you've got a group or a person within that saying, well, I've never had the chance to actually put forward my idea, then obviously you're going to, eat away at the culture of the place. So certainly starting off by yourself, making sure everyone's got the opportunity to put in their two bobs worth, but always in a constructive way, which, to be honest, you work with good people, that's always the way it's done. And then making sure, like in the final process, often you have 1,000 things that come out. So it's just distilling down into, okay, what are we going to action here? Okay, what's important? What are we going to action? And how are we going to measure, those sort of outcomes? Last thing you want to be doing is sort of leaving a review on the closet and then off you go out to the season and forget about it. So it's about continually looking back, and making sure you're ticking off those things that came up in your summary of your review.
It's always good when you can go into the room and share your thoughts and ideas and leave your ego at the door, and you're going in there to learn and grow. And that forwards coach might know something that, unlocks the team's game, that gives you a couple extra possessions for the backline, like you can always find those little gems in there. It's just when you go in there thinking you're right and everyone else is wrong, that you go down a hole that you probably don't want to, and then you start creating some negative chat, and it's just not constructive for anyone. And the outcomes that you get probably aren't the best for the team. And you just got to remember that team comes first, and you're trying to better the team, and that's what everyone else is trying to do. And if you come in there negative, you're not got the systems in place to probably have those conversations, and you really need to make sure that it's good, constructive, positive chat, and then you're putting the team first and finding those things to work on for next season.
That's it. And if you think you're the keeper of the clues, then, to me, you're not going to be successful. I really like sort of sitting in a room and having another person, bring across another perspective, another point of view that I haven't thought of. And it really, really makes me sort of think. And that's how I benefit. That's how I learn. That's how I grow. So, so it's always good when you get the opportunity for everyone to have their say.
100%. So what has made the Brumbies attack so good over the last 3 years since you've been there? You can say yourself.
Well, yeah, no, certainly not me. But I mean, when it sort of boils down, like I think we've been, reasonably successful. We certainly haven't. By the metrics that I went through before around our A zone and tries, it does signify that we're doing something right. But obviously, we've still got quite a room for improvement there. But the reality is that the core. The core part of our attack is around set piece. And when I say that, I don't just say that as a Brumby person. To me, if you're an attack coach, that should be part of your core development or your core focus is set piece. If you're not dominating or at least holding your own at scrum and line out, then it's going to be very difficult for you to have a successful attack. You might be a person who really tries to push the unstructured game and work on that counter and turnover attack, and that's great, and that can thrive. But the reality is, if your set piece is not functioning, then your attack is going to fall over. So in terms of that success, obviously Brumbies have a history in terms of the maul as well, and we've had some outstanding coaches who have driven that. From like more recently with Dan Palmer and and Laurie Fisher, and then Dan McCullough, who have all been over the different stages of Brumbies really driven that area, who are like world class in that space. So that's got nothing to do with me. I wouldn't know how to really mould them all and set that up in pre-season. I'll leave that to the experts. So I just try and make sure that when the ball does come out of there, we're ready to play. So it's so it really is a sort of a coaching team who look to prepare there from a set piece all the way through to an unstructured game. So that there's many aspects, and then sort of really clearly aligned with that. And one of the points of difference, I think, with the Brumbies to some other teams is that real clarity and attention to detail with what we're trying to achieve. So if it is a line-out play or if it is a kick return situation, players need to understand what their role is. They need to understand the importance of their role and what they're trying to achieve and how they're trying to achieve it. Otherwise, you'll find a situation where we'll have two blokes trying to hit the same hole, or there'll be poor execution on the back of poor timing from delivery of a line-out or what have you. So, really making sure players have real clarity and attention to detail of what it is they're trying to achieve. I think that's something we do quite well. And then probably the other area where I think that Brumbies have done very, very well is that training environment. If your training environment, your training sessions are not first class, then you're not going to produce first class performances on the field. Doesn't matter what the quality of players you've got, you must make sure that training environment achieving the outcomes that you want. And that's where I think we've had a lot of success in creating an environment where there's real speed, there's real intensity, and there's a real focus and a competitive nature when we hit those training sessions. It's never been a case of just going through the motions. It's never a case of just ticking a box. When players and coaches are out there, we're looking to, really make sure we're getting better. Certainly that training environment adds into that clarity and detail, and then obviously the set piece is that cornerstone of what we do.
And then it also reflects the discipline as well, because if your training standards are up to standard and you're doing everything at world class, then it reflects the discipline out on the field, and you're not giving away silly penalties or, cheap shots or just being lazy like that, because in my opinion, it always reflects how you train is how you play.
Yeah, that's right. And, that's where the playing group is so good to work with. Incredibly professional, really driven, very motivated. So, it's a pleasure to work with.
Is there anything else that you can think of to, have as keys to a successful backline attack that you sort of haven't mentioned, or a very, 1%ers that some people don't think about?
When it comes to backline, to me, the first ingredient that needs to be there is speed. If you do anything less than 100%, you're inviting the defence to get the upper hand on you. So it must be done at speed without a doubt. And it really doesn't matter whether you're going to be kick, pass or run. As a backline, you need to be doing it as efficiently and as much speed as you can, just to deny the defence an opportunity to connect and defend you. And the next key ingredient to that is the ability for the backline to identify space. My philosophy is that there's always, there's only ever 15 at the most players on the field, so they can only ever take up the same amount of space. It's about where that space is. Is it backfield space? So we're going to be using our foot. Is it space on the edge? Is it space through them? So it's, have you got players in your back line? And it's not just your 10 or your 12, it's the entire back line. Do they have the ability to get their eyes up, identify the space, and then make sure that everyone else is aware of that space? And then if you can play the ball to that space with speed, you're hard to defend.
So is that the type of micro chat you want in the back line? Just, when, say, Noah's talking to Whitey or Noah's talking to Len, is like they're just talking about space in attack? Is that the type of chat that you want out there?
Yeah, very much. And, on the field, particularly when there's a lot of, noise, with crowds, things that can be difficult. So we're very big on trying to use cues. So just, one word, punchy word, and then that will highlight to everyone else around them where that space is and how we need to react to that. And so, and often, like we keep sort of saying as a group, even if it's the wrong call, if we make a call and we back it and have a go at it, 9 times out of 10 it'll be successful. But obviously they're world-class players, so they're pretty good at IDing space and making good decisions. It's just about making sure we're really clear and follow through and execute with speed when we do them.
No, that's awesome. So when performing video analysis on your attacking structure and open play structure, what should coaches and athletes be looking at? What are some key areas?
In terms of attack, so I guess the one area around is shape. Shape can be a dirty word at times. Shape can often get players getting very insular where they just look to the left and right of their own team instead of, attack really is about just sort of talking about IDing space. So you need to get your eyes up. But shape allows you to break down a defense, and if you have a whole team who understands what their role is in that shape, then you tend to find that you can actually manipulate the defense to how you want to then create that one-on-one or create that edge space or the backfield space. So certainly from my perspective, I'm always looking at, is there clarity? Do each of the players in that in that team understand what their role is? And it certainly shows out. So when you've got, like, if I compare the Brumbies to an Australia A, so with the Brumbies, you get a whole pre-season. Obviously, some Wallabies drop in closer to the competition, but you get a good pre-season in. Whereas with Australia A, when you've got 2 sessions there, and often you've got blokes who are not really sure of their detail or their role in the shape, so therefore they may miss an assignment at a breakdown and we get turned over, or they may have 2 blokes running into the same hole. Or they may not understand why we're doing something and what the outcome will be because they're a little bit asleep to it. So it can be a real challenge, but certainly that's a big part of that pre-season focus for us at Brumbies is making sure people understand what their role is. So at any situation, wherever the breakdown is, whatever zone they're in, they understand what their role is. They can still make a decision. They can still have eyes up. They can still got kick, pass, or run options. But they need to understand what their particular role is, and obviously a sort of unstructured sort of scenario, it's still the shape's a little bit different at times, depending on what you're trying to achieve. But it's just really making sure that you get buy-in from all players. It is never an excuse to me. If you're on the field, you must be involved in the attack. Okay, and if you're not involved in the attack, it's because you are making your way as fast as you possibly can to be involved in the attack. So from a kick return perspective, I'd expect my forwards to be all involved in that second phase. It's not an excuse to say you're at the breakdown or the maul collapsed or whatever. You need to make sure you're there and can obviously contribute to the attack. So, so there's a few things there, but really it comes down to making sure that players understand their role within the team.
I think that's the key difference between, rugby union and rugby league is, once the ball is kicked back to you, you have to be an option out on the field. Whereas in rugby league, they, like to walk a bit and just let the fullback and outside backs take it. Oh yeah, take a couple of get-ups and all that. Whereas in union, you don't have that luxury. So if you're being caught out and just standing there, or you're on the ground for too long being a log on the ground, then you're not putting your best foot forward for the team and you're not an option. And if you're not an option, sweet, it makes defending so much easier because that's one less person I got to worry about. So if you have all your players available to be in your structure, then you're going to make some headaches for the opposition. And who knows what opportunities that you can find and what space you can capitalize on as well.
That's it. If you've got 15 blokes out there who are all contributing, you've got 15 threats. It's really hard for a defence to know where you're going to hit them,
and especially now because from 1 to 15, everyone's got an elite pass on them as well. They can play that long ball, they can play out the back or a short ball inside. It's crazy how well the game has developed over the years. Whereas 10 years ago, you think, oh yeah, prop doesn't really have to pass that well. Whereas now you see, James Slipper has a perfect out the back door, can play a little pop or play a inside ball to Tom Banks and go straight through the middle.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's right. He's that's right. Have to be very well-rounded players.
Hi everyone. We just want to take a quick break from this episode. We hope you're enjoying this episode so far and all the content we have produced. We appreciate all the support from our listeners and followers so far. If you haven't already, sign up to Elite Rugby SandC blog today. You'll find our website link in our bio below. Remember to like, subscribe, and share Elite Rugby SandC on all social media platforms to all your family and friends. Thanks again for all your support, and now back to the episode.
So when you're looking at the defense or the opposition for that team that week, what are some key areas you're trying to look at for attack and why? And how much time should you spend worrying about the opposition and more, worrying about yourself?
Yeah, it really depends. I mean, as to how much time you spend worrying about the opposition, I think it depends upon your own team and the competition you're in. Certainly, obviously in a professional environment, I do devote quite a bit of time towards that, and we need to sort of steer that. When it's not a professional environment, I would suggest you probably spend more time on yourself and making sure you own your strengths. But there's certainly a lot of focus that we'll have on opposition teams and we'll preview. So from a attack perspective, when I'm looking at a D, there's sort of four main areas that I'll break it down to. So it'll be the line out defence. So first of all, I'll look at how they've been shaping up in the line out defence. What are the tendencies? Where do they position people at different times? For example, do they position the 9 at hooker? Where there may be a bit of a mismatch there. If we dump at the front and play in that channel, how are they defending at the tail of the line out? Is there a seam there or do they leave space on the edge? So, as I said before, they've only got 15 players, so there's always going to be space. It's just identifying where it is and you'll see tendencies with different teams about where they tend to go. So line out defence is one, where then we can shape our line out attack around that to try and exploit. So obviously we have our strengths. If you have someone like a Bobby Valentini there, you love his carry in there. So it's like, where can we utilise him? Is it first phase? Is it second phase? Is it third phase? Where can he be useful? And then, that's my starting point generally. And then from there, it's around that multi-phase D. How do they fold? Where do they fold? Are they very narrow? Are they leaving the 15-metre channels open? Do they fan out a little bit more? We have to look to play through them. And then I sort of probably drill down a little bit further into D zone. And, the D zone D can often be a little bit different to the rest of the field. So what are the tendencies there? Have they got a heavier forward pack? Are we best here moving them around? Have they got a lighter forward pack? Are we going to look to play through them? So that's that's probably the third area I look at. And then the last area is really in that unstructured game. So when they kick the ball, how do they respond? Are they a team who connects really well, but, is about line integrity where they are happy to give up an extra 10 metres on the carry back, but they know they're going to be connected through the middle? Or are they a team who just flies out, and they all, where there's going to be opportunity to maybe play through them? So, so there's sort of the main areas around the line out, multi-phase at D zone and in that unstructured game. And I guess it's easy for me when they're really consistent with how they do things. If there's inconsistency, then it can be hard for me to give a real clarity around the plan against it. So it is quite a bit of stuff we go through there in terms of trying to break down the opposition and seeing how we can manipulate our attack for that particular week.
It also sounds like you're a defensive coach as well. The way that you're going into it really with all the depth in there, it sounds like you could easily go to be a defensive coach as well, mate.
I don't know about that. I would, But that's it. Like the defense coach has to be breaking down the attack. So it's so that's right. You have to sort of know the other side of the ball and how they tend to move and how teams will tend to default in certain situations.
It does sound like we had two attacking coaches, you and Laurie, because if you can use your defense as an attacking opportunity to slow them down, get the ball back, and put pressure on them, then you're just going to get the ball back pretty quickly and in a really good position as well.
Yeah, that's right, and that's where stats really don't do us justice at times. Like attack stats are always can be very good if the defense is excellent, but then equally the defense stats can really suffer when the attack's poor. Through no fault of the defense's capabilities, attack may be turning it over cheaply, or our kick strategy may be really poor and giving them opportunity to crack us when we're not setting a defensive line. So. So it is really important as a coaching group that you work well together and that you're sort of understanding of each other's areas.
That's awesome. So what does a typical training week look like out in the field for the Brumbies, say during the preseason, and then how does that change the in-season? You can just keep it really basic and not go too far into depth if you don't want to.
Yeah, no, that's right. So with pre-season, essentially we've got 4 days generally. We'll have a Wednesday, maybe a rest day, but, Monday, Tuesday, and then a Thursday, Friday, probably in the mornings. So first up, we'll have a unit session. And with those unit sessions, pretty light, more coaching related. So we're not trying to work too hard there. When I say not work too hard, physically work too hard, mentally really making sure we're focused and know what we're doing. But it may be something about, skill related. But we're certainly not covering a lot of meters. From a forwards perspective, they'll probably spend a little bit of time on set piece. Forwards will always tell you they work a bit harder in those sessions than the back.
They also need more time as well.
Yeah, that's it.
Can you give us 10 more minutes?
Yes, there's always one more. Yeah, one more. But and then the whole purpose of not trying to work too hard, or at least limit the meters in the morning, is so that when we have a team session, we're on. We know that we're not carrying any fatigue from the morning session. We're hitting the ground running in that afternoon and making it work. And then obviously in the afternoon sessions we'll have a different physical metric we're looking for. So whether it be intensive, which is more about the accelerations, and then so on a Monday we maybe have an intensive focus. So all our drills and games and things we do, we're doing a lot of acceleration, but we're not opening up over more than 20, 30 meters. Whereas on the extensive days, on sort of the Tuesday and Friday, we may be trying to stretch them out a bit more. So we're trying to get the hamstrings working. We're trying to get some high-speed metrics in what we're doing. So, so the key for me is making sure that whatever we do in the morning, it's not detracting from what's happening in that team session. And then when we get into the season itself, just because by pure fact we have a game on the weekend, we can't keep that sort of training load up. We'd break the players. So because of the load that I'll get through that game, we'll just have basically 2 sessions during the week. And that's probably one thing that I think people from a club environment often don't appreciate, that there's not actually more time on field. So, you go to a club competition, you're usually training your Tuesday and Thursday night. Well, really, where's sort of same time on field. You tend to find if you're doing any more than that, any more than those sort of 2 decent sessions during the week, then you're going to be sort of burning players out a little bit too much. So we'll have sort of 2 harder sessions, and we'll have on a Monday at the start of the week, we might have a bit of a lighter session where we're really building in content, so that we're ingraining our plays for the week, and we're just making sure that a little bit of a flush from the weekend, but quite easy. So it's just 2 hard sessions. But the key ingredient for pre-season and season, when we're on as a team, we're on. We cannot be going through the motions.
100%. It's a great insight, and even just mentioning on that Tuesday, or sorry, the Monday, and sort of the days that you're just focusing on the acceleration, sweet, and then you have your pictured days for where you can allow the players to open up and go a bit longer. It's a great way and a great key to have, and not just sort of, fluctuating with if it's acceleration or max velocity on one or both days. It's changing up and making sure that you're picking those days and being consistent with those days as well. So the athletes know, sweet, that's what we're doing that day. And then I can rest and recover on the Wednesday if I have that off as well. So it's really cool that you mentioned that.
That's it. And that, like you raised a really good point there. Players need to know what they're doing and why. And you get real buy-in. They understand what they're trying to achieve. So like if you know you're driving high speed meters on that particular day, and they know if they got the chance to open up, then they got to go. Then you get a whole lot better session. So real transparency there for, between coaches and players.
So how has strength and conditioning training helped your athletes to become better rugby players?
Massively. Don't tell the SandC coaches this, but but they, really, when you break it down, you look at when I go to club games, and I'll have a look at the Super Rugby squad, and to me, really a large part of that is the SandC that they do in that professional environment. I mean, the strength. I mean, it's a contact sport, combative sport, so therefore having to handle yourself in those contact situations is incredibly important, and that's where that SNC has such a important role. Building in speed, building in strength, and that's where you can see players who come out of a club environment and spend a year or two in a Super Rugby environment with S&C coaches, sort of running their program. You can see that they're physically they look different, but the sort of ramifications for their game are just immense. The fact that they've got that power through the hips where they can push themselves through gaps, where they can you sort of make tackles and be in contact situations that probably otherwise wouldn't have been able to. So so from a strength, from a speed perspective, it's so important. And as you know, as everyone knows, it's not something that happens overnight. Like it's a slow grind. And when you look at players at the Brumbies who start in the academy, and they get such a great foundation there that when they come into that sort of Super Rugby program, you can see them already sort of physically gaining, but it's still a couple of years before some really sort of kick off.
And a person that pops into my mind who's recently made his debut this year is Declan Meredith. Being able to work with him at West, and when he came down from Cairns, being the skinny little twig he was, and now you look at him, he's put on size over the right amount of time. He just didn't, put on 5 to 6 kilos like that and blow up like a balloon. He slowly increased his size, worked on his speed, worked on his strength, and now sort of being in the Brumbies system for a few years now, he's excelling, and you can just see that out in club rugby, and it was well-earned Super Rugby debut this year for him.
Yeah, mate, you read my mind there. I was actually thinking of Declan when I was describing that sort of athlete. Like a perfect example, like out of club, and you can see he's physically a lot stronger player now. So expecting big things from him.
So what do you think is often neglected or forgotten about in a rugby union program?
Not a lot, to be honest. Like it's so many aspects, and you have so many, staff in your high performance unit who look after everything, from recovery to the flexibility, the S&C, the on-field, all the everything seems to be measured and what have you. I probably think that one area of growth that we really had in the last sort of couple of years, I think at Brumbies, is really recognising within sessions the importance of rest, and really making sure that we, always within every activity, build in and understand what the work to rest ratio will be to achieve the best outcomes. It's all well and good you go out to a session. It may only be a 45-minute session, but if you go out there, no one can actually go at 100% for 45 minutes. Like, no one can go for 100% for more than 60 seconds. Like, so to think that you can go out there and just ask of your group of players to go full ball, but not appreciate that they need rest throughout that time, you'll tend to find that they get the feeling they'll, for one, they'll go into survival mode. They'll tend to, hold themselves back a little bit. And the other thing is they'll tend to always get that feeling of training at 80%. They won't run at full speed because, they haven't been given enough rest. So, really good growth that we've had within our sessions is making sure that we understand exactly how long we need to rest in between each rep of a drill or a game, so that way, when they actually are back into the work phase, they can actually train at 100% again. And you can get those high-speed meters you're looking at. You can get the excels you're looking for, and you get players understanding what it feels like to actually train at 100%. Because when you get into games, you're coming up against the Auckland Blues or the Crusaders. If you're playing at 80% against their 100%, you're going to get wiped off the park. So, and that's comes back to that transparency we were talking about. Players understand. Listen, you got to trust us. We're going to give you rest here, so don't go into survival mode. Go balls out for the rep, and then we'll give you enough time to recover to get back into it and go again. So to me, it sounds like a silly thing, but just understanding how you need to rest and how long you need to rest to achieve the rugby outcome and the physical metrics you're looking for.
I think it's perfect, because you will see that, coaches say, we only get an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours max. So we need to be going from drill to drill, moving quickly, jogging to our next drill, getting it done and moving on. Whereas allowing for that rest time could allow you as the coach to seek out some clarity from the group. Sweet, did you understand what we're trying to do on that drill? What are some things we can work on and improve for next time? And you can allow players to chat as well about what they think, and you can easily set up the next one. Or it's just allowing your players to rest. Like, as you said, like, we want good quality reps, and if you're only getting a small amount of time with them each session, then you're just overworking them, putting them in fatigue, and they probably don't know what fresh actually means and recovered actually means when they get out there on the field. So it makes perfect sense to me, and it's something that I've worked on with small-sided games, is really making sure, okay, if we're playing for 4 minutes, cool, I need to give you around 4 minutes or maybe 3 minutes rest to then go again, because if I'm trying to get the outcomes that I want, meters per minute, accelerations and all this type of stuff, I need to allow you to rest, because in rugby, you do get some good rest times, why not do it at training as well?
That's it. Yeah, you've got to replicate that game situation. And you brought up a good point there around, in that rest time, players can talk, which is, exactly what you want in games. You want that good habits, where leaders can make sure that you're connecting, or, good points are being raised and players are thinking. And then when they go back out there, they're, ready to go.
So for rugby athletes listening out there, what are some other, sports outside of rugby that they should look to gain some knowledge and then apply it to their own sport? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Like the first thing I like to say is, I don't think enough young players watch enough rugby. So before you go looking anywhere else, how much rugby have you watched? Because, I often hear, I prefer to play than to watch. Like, I think that's a load of rubbish. Like, if you actually want to perform the best, you need to actually watch what the best players do. And watch someone work out what sort of play, who you think, is good, and identify what they're good, have a closer look at them. So, so I'd definitely sort of, before you looked at anything else, make sure you're watching enough rugby. But obviously a little bit of transfer with league. From attack perspective, there can be, some crossovers there, and defense, of course. But so if that's of interest to you, that's something to pursue as well. And in terms of modelling as well, like watching some track athletes, some sprinters, it's always good watching that sort of movement efficiency and seeing how the best in the world do it. I think it's always something to learn. But yeah, mate, I'd always recommend just watch rugby. Like, there's so many games out there now that it's so easy to watch. It's not like you have to scour the internet for them. Like, they're actually now on decent platforms where they're quite easily to access. So watch as much rugby as you can.
100%. And I think it's also, for us, growing up, it was always playing touch footy at lunch. It was always doing touch footy during the summertime as well, and OzTag and stuff like that. And that can help you identify space and where to attack and how to manipulate defenses with people who may or may not play the sport for a while, or they might play, a different sport, then come over to give touch footy a turn, and you've got to play a different kind of athlete. So I think doing that along the lines as well can make big positive gains for your rugby.
Oh, definitely. That's right. Yeah. Any sort of invasion game, you're having to identify space. Yeah, it'd be very handy.
And also would recommend just any sport that has a really good mental aspect to it as well. So it could be golf, for example, and just learning from some of the best in the world that, for a game that it is physically demanding, having to hit a driver and all that. If you haven't played golf, definitely go give it a go. But it's that mental aspect of, I've just birdied one hole and then I get a double bogey on this hole. How do I bounce back from it? And what are some mental cues and sort of imagery that they use to help prepare them for, literally just one shot and then go from there. So I think looking at those sports that have a big mental side to it, if you can learn from them and then apply it to rugby, it'll be a game changer for you.
That's right. Find out about true pressure when your mate says, I'll bet you $10 on this putt. And then you'll find out how to deal with it.
Yeah. Or the last hole, right? It's the longest drive. Who wins? All those little things that pop up. So when you do get some spare time during the week, what do you like to do outside of family and cycling, which have been the main ways for you to forget about coaching? Is there anything else that's sort of, a secret hobby or habit that you like to do?
No, but it's just exercise. If I get a chance, it's exercise. It's my well-being suffers if I don't get my heart rate up. So, and that's the challenge. Like during the season, is when you're sort of head down. The whole time it's just trying to find that time to be able to get on the bike or go to a gym and get the heart rate going. If I don't do that, I'm not myself. So that's certainly the number one.
You ever pump some iron with the physio team with Wello and Byron? Because they're pretty strong lads themselves.
No, they would leave me behind. So I'd embarrass myself. So I'm more body weight these days than lifting 10.
Fair enough. You should just challenge them to the body weight exercises and see how they go.
Oh, they're pretty impressive though. They leave me behind.
Yeah. So this one I brought up with the last episode that I recorded, which is going to be out very soon. Random questions. So it's just short, quick answers if you can, to the best ability. Sometimes you can't, but it's just a list of questions. One of them I didn't actually send you, so this is going to be a good answer to it.
Yep.
But first one, who wins the Rugby World Cup this year, and who is going to be the surprise team that stands up this year?
France are going to win. Just at the home. At the home. So I mean, there's a lot of teams that could do it, but I think I'd say France as a guess. One team to surprise a few, Scotland. Tough draw, like a tough pool. South Africa and Ireland in there, but I think they'll sting one of them. I think they'll surprise someone.
That's interesting, France, because only one Northern Hemisphere team has won a World Cup, and I don't know. I haven't seen enough from France, consistently to back that. And
like consistency is the key, but at home, I don't know. I reckon they'll they might find it. They might be able to win 3 in a row, and I reckon
fair enough. And I completely against what you said, but Scotland, I don't think Scotland are that good. I could be wrong, but I think the World Rugby ranking that I saw today, I was like, really? Are they that high? Like, surely not.
Yeah, no, as a team who's not considered one of the better ones, like, obviously, anyone from like, there's a whole range of teams. There's probably about 6 teams who you could easily argue that they'll win. But and Scotland wouldn't feature in there, but they might surprise someone there.
But you are the rugby coach, and I'm just the fan. So what do I know? So which players are due for a breakout year next year for the Brumbies and Super Rugby?
Well, I'll give you 2. One back, one forward. So one back, Declan Meredith. We've already spoken about. Working really hard, getting his body in really good shape. I think expect big things from a forward. Harry Valla. Harry missed the season, loose head prop. Missed the season because of that knee injury in a pre-season game against the Tars. His body has really changed in the sort of last 12 months. You can't walk past the gym without seeing him in there. He would run through a brick wall if it meant success to the team. So I'm expecting big things from Harry.
That's awesome. So in a 100-meter race, bursting the entire Brumbies coaching team support team, what time would you get and how many meters would you win by?
Once upon a time I would have won, but now I wouldn't even step up to the line. My joints would fail me badly. I'm trying to think who would win. Like no doubt Steve would rate himself as a victor. But whether he would, I don't know. Maybe might be Byron. Byron Fields is at physio there. He might be a surprise packet. Who knows?
He does get plenty of practice having to run out on the field, to the players when they're injured.
That's right. He does.
Do you ever challenge Stephen to kicking drills at training, goal kicking, place kicking?
No, you have a look at him kick. He's still sharp. There's no way I would. No, he does like joining in activity, Steve, and you can see that he's still got it. His touch is still first class.
No, that's awesome. So what is a common misconception you hear in rugby that's just wrong?
The one we get at the Brumbies all the time from supporters is around the box kick. It's like you constantly get this sort of dialogue around, oh, would you stop box kicking? Why kicking? And it's the game's changed quite a bit from a lot of the people who are saying that probably of a vintage where it wasn't part of the game and they just can't get their heads around it. So when you dig down and do all the analysts will sort of show you, if you go beyond 8 phases with possession, the outcome is more than likely you're going to have a negative outcome. So therefore, you have to be sort of sharp with the possession, and certainly if you're on the back foot to try and get momentum started again, very, very difficult, and more than likely you're going to have negative outcomes. So really important you use your kicking game, and certainly from when you're in our half and you're not in the 22, so you're in what we call that C zone, the last thing you want to be doing is kicking the ball down the middle to allow one of these awesome back three athletes to rip back at you with an unstructured D and tear you apart. So the best approach often in that sort of regard is to put up a box kick. So you've got a kick chase line that is nice and connected. Sometimes you may win it back, and when you don't win it back, you're nailing them and you've got a defensive connected line. So therefore their attacking platform is really limited. And it's probably one thing that, a lot of spectators don't understand because they say, we're just giving the ball to them 20 metres down. But the reality is we're controlling that ball and the likelihood of us then getting it back is certainly a lot higher than just kicking it down the middle of the field.
100%. What has been a big game-changing moment in your coaching career that sort of stands out?
Probably a point appointments. They're tough to come across when you're really actually trying to find a pathway there. So the opportunity to work in the Reds Academy was a massive one, to be full-time coaching there. Then when Dan McKellar gave me a call and I came down the Brumbies, that was equally a highlight for me. And then every Brumbies game since then has been a highlight. It's an incredible privilege to work with that group, of staff and of players. So that's always a highlight. And then probably more recently, involvement with Australia A, has been awesome. Some of those experiences. So, beating Japan in a series over in Japan, beating Fiji in Fiji at the Pacific Nations Cup, those sort of stand out as, real highlights for me.
It's awesome. If you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, metaphorically speaking, of course, getting a message out to millions or billions of people, what would you say and why would you say it?
Well, you're talking about billboards. So at the moment, I'm family time up here in the Gold Coast, spending a bit of time driving up and down the M1, and I can tell you, I'm thinking billboards there, and I'd like to put a billboard up just saying, "Be kind." Be kind. The amount of idiots there are on that M1 who I think believe the four lanes should be owned by them, or anyone else should get out of their way, and so probably add to that, be slow and be kind. But certainly I think far too many people in the world these days go to get angry and get aggressive instead of just being kind. So much easier, and the outcome's a lot better.
100%. And top 3 books that everyone should read.
I'm the worst person to ask about that. I'm not a big reader at all. I'll read some Bill Bryson travel books and some nonfiction there. I've actually got a Curtis McGrath book sitting next to my bed. I've got to start reading. So usually it's I'm just into sort of biographies, autobiographies about from athletes. But I spend more time reading boring journals or articles than I do books these days.
That's easy done. So last question before we wrap it up. What is a highlight that sort of stands out in your coaching career so far?
A highlight so far. Certainly, playing in finals games with the Brumbies, and just the whole environment around it, like the build up, when you just that feeling of being part of a group of people who are all so motivated to go in that one direction. So for example, as I said before, I'm a teacher by trade, and sometimes you'll be sitting with a class and you'll have a few motivated students, some who are wondering when lunchtime is. You got a few who are trying to annoy you on purpose. The general feeling is, sometimes you can be battling, whereas, going into a finals game with the Brumbies where you've got everyone so motivated, so hardworking, so professional, supportive, and you feel like you're a collected force going into those games, it's, that's a highlight for me. It's very, very sort of special and an incredible privilege.
It's awesome. So who should be my next guest on the podcast? Is there any coaches or athletes that pop up that should jump on for a chat?
One bloke I'd recommend, but you'll never get him, is Dan Palmer. Well, you won't get him at the moment because he's the busiest man in the world. So he's working, with Eddie and his and the Wallabies at the moment. Then he's going straight over to Leicester, and he's probably doing his own podcast on the side still. He's the most intelligent man I've ever met, and fascinating human being. So who has ideas on many different things. He'd always be a good chat.
Oh, he's definitely on the list. I do have a list of people I'm trying to get, or some people obviously say no to it, but he's definitely on there because, just his rugby brain, from what I've heard from yourself and then Dan McKellar and from Ben, it's just incredible, and it's great to see him progress through the ranks. And currently with the Wallabies, it's awesome to see.
Yeah, no, that's right. It's good to see good people, do good things.
So, where can listeners find you on social media if they do want to sort of keep up to date with you? If you're up,
they won't. They won't. Yeah. No, I've too busy for social media, so you won't find me.
Nah, easy done. Maybe one day, who knows? You might be an influencer one day.
Maybe. Who knows?
Easy done. That's all the questions for today, Rod. Thank you very much for joining me today. It's been awesome to get more insight on yourself and to, pick that brain on attacking rugby. And it's been awesome to, as a Brumbies fan, to continue to see the Brumbies progressing and being the best team in Australia. I'll say that out there. They are the best team in Australia, and they have been for many years. So it's really cool to pick your brain and get all this knowledge. And I know people are going to get a lot out of it. So thanks for joining me today.
No, good on you, Kieran. Thank you. And absolute privilege to talk with you.
Thanks for tuning into another episode of Elite Rugby SandC podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, and rate Elite Rugby SandC on Spotify and YouTube, and make sure you follow us on Instagram. Sign up to become a beast via the link in the description or via Instagram page. Also, don't wait, make that good decision and join Elite Rugby SandC today and take your game to the next level.